We used to look at inland shipping as this legacy game. A grandfather passes the wheel to the son, who passes it to the grandson.
Right, but looking at the research we have today, that model is practically dead.
Exactly. The data suggests that starting out in inland shipping right now is less about tradition and, well, it's more like launching a high-stakes, capital-intensive startup. So for this deep dive, we are unpacking this strategic roadmap for the modern skipper entrepreneur.
And it is quite a roadmap. We'll be covering everything from these forensic level ship inspections to figuring out how to navigate complex global banking regulations just to get a loan.
Right, and before you even get to the bank, you actually have to get qualified. The EU qualification certificate that rolled out in January 2022 is definitely not just a quick driving test.
No, not at all. You're looking at 6 different theory exams.
Yeah, I saw that. Navigation, law, ship mechanics.
Stability, yeah. It is remarkably academic now. But it has to be, because the aim is harmonizing standards across Europe.
And the practical component has really escalated too, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It isn't just demonstrating some skills on the water anymore. Candidates now have to pass a full mission simulator exam.
Which makes total sense when you think about the traffic density out there today. It's effectively pilot training to test how you handle critical failures in a controlled environment.
Exactly. And for ships over 200 tons, which is basically every commercial vessel, you also need that professional competence certification.
So the regulations are essentially telling you that you aren't just a captain anymore, you are the CEO of a floating company.
That's the real key takeaway here. You are managing safety, personnel, and legal compliance long before you ever untie the ropes.
Okay, so let's assume you pass all those exams and you are ready to buy. The technical due diligence phase is where you really have to be careful.
You are buying a massive steel asset that literally lives in a corrosive environment.
Right. And the standard now is this ultrasonic thickness measurement. That's where they map the steel density just to satisfy the insurers.
Correct. But interestingly, even with all that high-tech scanning, our sources emphasize a very low-tech fail-safe.
The nose method. I loved that detail so much.
Yes, the nose method. Buyers are advised to physically smell the machine room and under the floorboards.
Because a musty odor can reveal hidden leaks or structural moisture that those ultrasonic sensors might completely miss.
It sounds so primitive, but the rule is, if it smells wrong, you walk away.
Right, so the hull is solid, the floorboards smell fine, now you have to actually finance the thing. This is where the startup reality hits hard.
It really does. Banks are typically capping financing at 60 to 80% of the ship's execution value.
And that is a critical distinction for anyone listening. That is not the market value.
No, it is much lower. Execution value is essentially the forced liquidation price.
What the bank would get if they had to auction the ship tomorrow.
Precisely. And the reason the loan-to-value ratio is so low comes down to the Basel Accords.
Because under Basel regulations, shipping is classified as a high-risk asset class.
Which forces banks to hold significantly higher capital reserves against these loans. So to mitigate that risk, they demand a massive down payment from the borrower.
Leaving a huge funding gap for a starter. But the research highlights a few gap fillers to solve this. First, you have government aid, like the PMV Startling in Flanders.
Right, that is a subordinated loan of up to 100,000 euros.
Which banks view almost exactly like equity.
And that equity view is vital because it lowers the bank's perceived risk profile on the primary mortgage.
Then there's the Mercurius model, which stood out to me because it's not just a loan. It is actually a career path.
It is essentially a franchise model. It allows a skipper to operate a ship owned by a larger fleet.
So over time, you build up equity through your labor and successful operations rather than needing upfront cash.
Exactly. It perfectly bridges the gap between being an employee and an owner for those who just cannot raise that initial capital.
Finally, we really have to look at the hardware itself. You can't just buy an old diesel chugger anymore, not with Stage V emission standards clamping down on nitrogen oxides and particulates.
Buying an old engine is a massive liability now.
That's why we're seeing the rise of modular engine rooms. Builders are designing ships where the entire power plant is just a drop-in unit.
Right, so you run on diesel today, but the naval architecture allows you to swap that for a hydrogen or methanol system in 10 years.
Without having to cut the ship open.
Yeah.
And for the batteries, there's the ZES model, zero emission services. They basically treat battery containers like propane tanks.
You just swap them out and pay for the energy you use.
Not the hardware itself.
Right, which is brilliant because it shifts the cost from capital expenditure, buying those expensive batteries, to operating expenditure.
It is what makes green shipping financially viable. So to sum it up for you, The modern skipper is part navigator, part hedge fund manager, and part engineer.
Absolutely. It's a highly sophisticated profession that demands a strategic mindset from day one.
It really does. Here's a thought to leave you with. With the rise of swappable battery containers and modular engines, are we moving toward a future where the ship itself is just a dumb shell and the power source is simply a subscription service? Something to think about next time you see a barge float by. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.